I'm Chris Finnegan from the Nelson Library, and we have a special program for you today. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Rick, and thank you for the many other people who have been involved with this project. And let's go and enjoy this program.
I'm Gordon Peary, and today we're looking at this website, nelsonhistory.org. This was created a few years ago by the Nelson History Group to help promote the sesquicentennial. That was the 250th anniversary of the incorporation of Nelson. And over the years, it's come to be a significant repository for articles and photographs about the history of Nelson. There are now approaching 300 articles and many more in the pipeline. And each one is assigned one or more categories. So if you're looking for something in particular, you can come to this category page and explore that way. And I particularly want to point out that the number of authors who have contributed to the website, in some cases posthumously, things that people had written were transcribed and now posted on the website. And if you look over on the left side here, you'll see over 30 names of contributors. And foremost among them was, of course, Karen Tolman, who we just lost recently. She did amazing work on the site, and also Rick Church, who we'll be hearing from shortly because it's his project that we'll really be discussing this morning. I just want to show you a couple of quick things that are about the site before we get into the roads and maps. We have a page here, or several pages actually, for the calendars that we produce leading up to the sesquicentennial. So you can go here and you can click through the calendars, the images, and read the captions. And that in itself is a great history lesson. We also made postcards from some of the calendar images, and those are for sale down at the Harrisville General Store. And also when we do have events, oftentimes various town community events, they're for sale there as well. And there's also a pretty nifty search function here. I'm going to look for the name Ezra because I noticed that there are a lot of Ezras in early Nelson history. So we'll do a search for that, and you see we have Ezra Sheldon, Ezra Wilder, Ezra Smith, and then other articles in which the name Ezra is going to appear. The search isn't specific to names, it's any sort of word that you would happen to put in. But this morning, we're going to be looking at a new feature of this website, something that Rick and I have been working on for a few months now, but something that represents nearly 2 decades of a massive effort on the part of Rick Church and Dave Birchenough. And here's Rick to talk about it.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's nice to have so many people on the call. It's really nice also to be doing this with Gordon. As Gordon indicated, this whole thing started about 20 years ago when the planning board decided that we needed a new master plan. And somebody asked the question, could somebody please tell us the status of all these old roads that run through our woods? And then Dave Birchenough and I began meeting one morning every week down at the town archives and literally turning the pages of the town records from 1753 to the present. That's where you find the records of old roads. And wouldn't you know who the planning board chair was in those days? Gordon Peary. And here we are again. Well, Dave and I felt that roads are described in the old records by who they served and what they were trying to accomplish. And we kind of assumed that we could go to Park Struthers, A History of Nelson, New Hampshire, and find out where those people lived. And what we found when we did that, there was an awful lot missing. After all, histories don't contain everybody. So that began lots and lots of visits and many, many hours spent at the Cheshire County Registry of Deeds, where we recorded literally thousands of old property records. And with those property records and Park Struthers, we were able to find out where most of these people live and therefore locate the roads that were described as being adjacent to those people. From the beginning of this project, Dave Birchenough insisted that we do something to preserve our work and make it available to the public. And being a computer guy, Dave had this dream that you would be able to go online to a map and you'd be able to click on and you'd find out who lived there and you'd find out, whatever you wanted to know or might be known about them. And in pursuing that idea, we went to Keene State College, we went to Antioch University, New England, we went to Franklin Pierce University, and we got genuine excitement from those people, but it was never sustained. And then we were introduced to a guy named Stephen Lamond, who's an enthusiastic and multi-talented master's degree candidate. I guess he's got his degree now, and staffer at Antioch University, New England. And Steve taught us how to use LiDAR maps to find things like stone walls, which would be property lines in the old days, to find cellar holes, to find old town roads. And in addition to that, Stephen knew about something called story maps, which is the use of maps to tell stories, oddly enough. And in this case, we're talking about the story of Nelson's development. And as Gordon said, over the years, I've written a number of articles about Nelson history, and I've sort of dreamed of sort of bringing these together into some sort of a companion piece to Parks Struthers history. And in the process of talking about that with one of my editors, Susan Perry, she said, you've discovered an awful lot about roads and dwelling places, and it would tie your project together nicely if you could come up with a more up-to-date and inclusive map. So what Gordon's about to give you a tour of is a work in progress of developing such a map, inspired by the planning board years ago, by Dave Birchnoff's vision of what this should look like, by Stephen Lamond's technical wizardry, and by Gordon Peary's good and hard work with the website. So Gordon's going to give us a little tour of the map that we've created.
First of all, I want to say that Stephen Lamond actually should be joining us shortly. He had a conflicting meeting this morning, but he thought that would be done at around 11:15. So we'll look forward to seeing him. So we're at the home page, and we're going to go to the historical map, easy to find. And notice right at the top here, there's a reference to a page called Map, Facts, and Facts. And I would really encourage anyone who's going to look at this map just to spend a little time on that page. There are a few quirks about how this works, and that will just help you to understand it. On the other hand, if you're like me, you probably don't want to read the instruction manual before you get into it. So either way works. And also take a look at the About Roads and Cellar Hole projects over on the right. So now we're going down to the map, and you'll see a bunch of roads, and you'll see a bunch of icons, little squares which represent building sites. So we're going to look over here on the upper right, and we're going to see a list of layers. And right now you'll see that the home sites and the roads are checked. The LiDAR is not checked, and you'll see why that is. Because when the LiDAR vision is activated, it's a lot harder to decipher the rest of the map. But this is a really cool thing to explore. The lakes are very, very clear. You can tell where there's water, and you can sort of tell the elevations through the relief. And as Rick said, this has been a very valuable tool in the research that they've been doing. But we leave this off by default. And I'm also going to now turn off the building icons so that we're just looking at the roads. And part of the interactivity of this map is that you can click on things and you can find out about it. Part of the interactivity also, you just saw a little zoom there and you see a little zoom there. That's a quirk of the website that we don't really have control over. When that happens, just go to the home button in the upper left and it'll bring you back where you were. And it's probably going to happen even in the course of this demonstration. I'm going to go up here and click on this little fragment of road, which happens to be right near me, and we get some information. The road was commissioned in 1768. It was discontinued in 1840. If you look up at the top here, you see that this is panel 1 of 2. So what's in number 2? I'm going to click here and you'll see that the upper part of that road is now highlighted. That was discontinued in 1839, a year before the other part of the road. And you'll find throughout here, both on the roads and especially on the buildings and home sites and so forth, that there are varying degrees of information here. We're actually going to be coming back to this road in just a minute, but now we're going to take a little journey through time. I'm going to go to the clock icon here, and that's going to activate a time slider. Okay, now I'm going to pause that. It's showing that we're in the year 1769, and Nelson has its first main thoroughfare. It starts over here, sort of at the end of Apple Hill Road or Lead Mine Road as we know it. And it comes up, there's that sharp curve in the road just below the schoolhouse farm, comes up this way into the center of Nelson, and then follows out Old Stoddard Road to just before my house, where then it goes off to where Steve and Bretta live now, and it goes over to the Stoddard line. So this was, and that was that little segment of road that we looked at before. So this was Nelson's first main thoroughfare, and it was built in 1769, which was pretty amazing. I don't think it was paved, but it was there. I'm gonna activate this little time device here and change this from 1x to 2, because otherwise it sort of crawls through the journey. But we'll turn that on again, and you can start seeing some activity now. We're right about the time of the revolution, and stuff is really happening in Nelson. Rampant development. A lot of it first over to the east and the south. And we're still, we're not even into 1790 right now. It's really amazing to think about this. And we'll let this go on for just, we won't go all the way to the present time, but in just a minute, you're going to start seeing some interesting new trends. Now, we're just approaching 1820, which was really the peak population of Nelson up until about 1920. And so if you're watching closely, you'll see that some of the roads are starting to disappear. And so that kind of gives you an idea. We could keep going. A few roads are going to be added. Mostly roads are going to be disappearing. But we'll stop this for now. And I'm wondering about the roads, the construction of the roads and how they function and so forth. So maybe, Rick, you can talk about that.
Sure, Gordon. Roads were, of course, a vital building block in any new community. And everybody was connected to the center of Nelson by a road, and the town itself was connected to all the adjacent towns very early on. And as I said, roads were defined by the people they served. And people had to get to grist mills where they could grind the grain they grew into flour, to sawmills where they get the boards to build their houses and their barns. And more than that, to get to the meeting house for religious services and town meetings. People in those days really wanted to be connected. In the beginning, and there were people here before that first road was actually laid out, the roads were just paths for horses through the woods, and obviously they became much more than that over time. Today, people like their privacy and they like long driveways. Back then, people liked to be right on the roads. And if you go on old roads in Nelson, you'll find that the cellar holes are literally a few feet from the road. In fact, one example of this is in 1857, the person who owned the house that John Bunce lived in petitioned the town for a road connecting his house to what we now call Granite Lake Road. That's maybe 100 feet long. So people like to be right connected. Of course, most of Nelson's early roads have disappeared. they're difficult to find. As I mentioned earlier, LiDAR mapping technology has allowed us to see the stone walls, see the cellar holes, see the old roads, and it makes it a great deal easier to find them today. I'm going to turn this back over to Gordon, who's going to give us a further tour of the map.
So here we are back at the map, and I'm going to return to this upper right function here, which has our layers, and I'm going to activate the layers called home sites. And there, all of a sudden, you see that there's a reason for these roads. There are various icons here. The hollow blue icons indicate a cellar hole or a site of a cellar hole. If it's a solid blue icon, that is a building that goes back quite a ways, but where the house still exists. And then there are a few other icons representing schools, mills, mines, and so forth. I'm going to go here to the center and click on the box for D41. And you'll see we have some information here. We have the location ID that Rick and Dave have come up with. And this is just a reference system that they developed so that they could know what was where and where to put stuff. It differs somewhat from the location reference that Struthers has, but we refer to Struthers in case anyone is looking at Struthers history so they can see where things link up. Another source of information was Wadsworth, and you can read about this in the About Roads and Cellar Holes page of the site. In this case, we don't have a reference for that. The structure type is a cellar hole. The first occupant was Charles Rice. They started living there in 1784, and they had left by 1835. And then here, we have this button that says More Info. And voila, it brings us to a page that describes this site. It describes the first settlers and, to the extent that we know, other activity that happened, subsequent owners, and so forth. So most of the icons that you'll see on the map have a link to pages. We're still filling in this. I've got actually a backlog of about 15 pages to add that Rick has sent me. So you may go to an icon and not find a link, but they will eventually get there. And then if you're wondering where this was, if you didn't come to it from the map, but you came to it from a search or something, and you're wondering where in Nelson is that, you can click on the little map icon at the bottom, and it gives you a blow-up map showing you where it actually is. So let's go back to the map, and we'll look at another site. We'll look at a mill site. This is F512. We can tell it's a mill by the little water wheel icon there. And we see the information about it. We click on the More Info, and this gives us a short article about Stephen Osborne's sawmill. Many of the articles that come directly from the map are fairly short, but in some cases, there's actually been a longer story that we've tied into. And there was an article that Rick wrote some time ago about this location and the activities there. So we see click for a more complete description, and we click on that, and we find this very lengthy article with wonderful photographs talking about the mill site. There's the well. And then a couple more resources at the bottom. We have a picture of the foundation, and we have just a couple photographs of a sawmill in Derry, New Hampshire, which is probably very similar to the kind of sawmill that was there. So we can imagine what that was like. And we can really link to any either internal or external resources that we want to with this. I'm going to do a little search now for someone named Bannister Maynard, because that name means something. And we come to this page, and we see there's a little icon there. Candace Fulford has been very busy with the website, helping us to sort of spice it up a little bit graphically, but also she's really into Find a Grave and ancestry stuff. So in this case, she's included a link to the gravestone for Bannister Maynard. who moved here from Massachusetts and ended up moving back there. He's buried in Templeton, but he spent some time in Nelson, and that is his gravestone. And then let's see. I want to look at someone else named Asa Robbins. So we see that there are 2 pages about Asa Robbins. It was not unusual for people to move. They built a little house and then they gave it to their kids, or they moved next door and built a better house or something like that. So in this case, we see that there are 2 articles titled Asa Robbins and then 2 more in which his name appears. So you can see how all of these things are interconnected in this very small early community. And so this is the Asa Robbins article. And what catches our attention is that the last couple of lines here in the first paragraph: the property came into the possession of the Wells family in the late 19th century. A member of that family, Dave Kennard, owns the farm today. Well, I think probably most people know that Dave Kennard runs Wellscroft Farm, and that is in Harrisville. So what's that all about? Rick?
Gordon's been showing us the map of ancient Nelson, and we've included in ancient Nelson all that Nelson was once upon a time. And when the town was granted in 1753, it was 5 miles north to south and 8 miles east to west. That's 40 square miles. We lost about 1/6 of the town in 1787 when Sullivan was formed, and about another 6 when Roxbury went away in 1812, and about the same amount when Harrisville was formed out of parts of Nelson and Dublin in 1870. In the case of Roxbury and Sullivan, the petitions to the legislature for the formation of those 2 towns cited long distances over bad roads to get to the meeting house as a reason that they wanted to have their own towns. Harrisville's a different story because that's a village that would straddle the border of, as I said, Nelson and Dublin, that formed around the woolen mills there. And the owners of the mills decided it would be really useful to have a railroad go through the town, and they attracted the interest of a company that wanted to build a railroad from Keene to Manchester. And the company said, fine, we'd like to build a railroad too, but what we'd like is an assessment on Dublin and Nelson of 5% of their assessed valuation. That's a heck of a lot of money. Well, in Nelson, it got amended to 3% and voted down. In Dublin, it passed, but not by the 2/3 majority such a big tax bill required. And the mill owners petitioned the legislature, and Harrisville was formed. The reason I mention this is because we've included in our map all of what is in Nelson at the time that you're looking at. So for example, as the map shrinks, one of the reasons it shrinks is because Sullivan went away and Roxbury went away and Harrisville went away. And those parts of the map disappear in 1787, 1812, and 1870. So anyway, they drop off the map, and that explains why some of those shrinkages take place. I'm going to turn it back over to Gordon to wrap up.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. That brings to an end our formal presentation. A couple of things. As you'll find when you get in and explore this website, what we've done today is really just touched the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more functionality available in the map that you can explore. Look at the map facts and facts pages to see how that works, or just get in there and mess around with it. You can't blow it up. At least I don't think so. And we do want to open up things for discussion now. So if you have something to say, you can unmute yourself. And if you're the first person that Zoom recognizes, then you'll be the one who gets to talk.
This is Sam Osherson, Gordon and Rick and Steve. This is an amazingly wonderful project. Thank you so much. As I was listening to this, and seeing how the town expanded and all, my mind actually went also to the people who were here before us, actually. And I'm wondering, is there any way of incorporating indigenous development, indigenous people, what this place was like even before we, in quotes, because it was settled before we settled it?
Yeah, yeah, that is a great question, and it's actually something that it's always been on my mind, and I've been thinking about it more and more in the last month. In addition to trying to keep up with Rick's articles, I've also been doing some kind of redesigning of the website, and I'm actually going to do a quick screen share here, and we'll go back to the home page. And apropos of your question, down in the lower left corner, this is the second paragraph of something about the website. Well, the history of the town, by definition, must start with those European settlers who stepped into an area designated by the British Empire. The history of the land and its occupants is an older story. And as we said earlier, this website is always going to be a work in progress, but I do think that there are going to be opportunities for us to address that. Again, technically, you know, the political boundaries that designate the town would be irrelevant, and there's not a lot of evidence of major activity here, but it was still, you know, for thousands of years, a place where people lived. And
Right.
they didn't move rocks around to make stone walls, and they didn't do other foolish things. But I think that is very important, and we would certainly welcome any suggestions, and also would welcome, you know, if anyone wants to research and write about that, or if you know of articles.
So how would one make contributions to whether pictures or information?
Yeah.
Would you be kind of the go-to?
Yeah, you can
Or-
send email to me. If you have something specific for the map stuff, you can also connect with Rick, and both of our contact information. If you're on the website in the upper right, there's a section called the Nelson History Roundtable, which describes the sort of informal group that is responsible for this. But just send an email saying, here's an idea, here's some pictures that I have, and so forth. And take it from there. Yeah. You know, just going back to something I pointed out at the very beginning, already there are over 30 people that have contributed one way or another to this website. And so it really touches across a lot of the town already. But it would be great if a year from now we were doing a library program and we could say we now have 60 or 70 contributors. So, and you know, we can, I can kind of serve as a gatekeeper, but we can really have a variety of information. And in fact, let me just share, this is also from that section that I just read from the homepage. I say, while this website endeavors to portray Nelson history accurately, the flavor of the town has been seasoned by flamboyant, eccentric characters and tall tales, most of which serve as a smile or laughter generating entertainment. We trust the explorers of this website to distinguish between the dry data and the more frivolous musings, though the latter does indeed say a lot about the history of the town. And I think that's important. We never want to take ourselves too seriously.
A comment occurs to me. I love the idea that some of you, many of you maybe would contribute, would ask questions about what you're reading, because that would cause me in particular to do more digging and to look at things in a different way. That always improves things. And he hasn't said anything yet, but one of the resources we have in town, if anybody out there has a cellar hole on their property and are interested in learning about it, you can read, if I've gotten to it, the paltry few things I've been able to discover, but you can supplement that understanding by calling a fellow townsperson named Bill Dunn. I call Bill Dunn fairly often when I'm baffled about a site and I can't find any evidence in the deeds and stuff that it was occupied, but let's say beyond some date, but I think it maybe was. And Bill will come out with his metal detector and look for objects. Coins have dates on them. Various other objects can be dated professionally. Bill knows how to do that. So if you've got a place on your property that you're interested in learning about, I think I can speak for Bill. I think he'd be happy to come take a look with you.
I would love it. I actually have another metal detector, so if you're interested in doing it with me, we can do it together. I'd like to, at some point, if I get enough people who'd either let me do their house or their cellar hold, if it's old enough, to maybe do a presentation called Diggin' Nelson and show everybody all the different artifacts and talk about the histories and stuff of the stuff we found.
Right on the homepage of the website in the upper right, there's an article about a new discovery that Bill made, and there's even some pictures of his finds. Well, I think we can sign off now. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, in case you weren't here at the time, we just found out that one of the Nelson roads, of my road, had thrown a truck off into a telephone pole this morning. And this telephone pole is split and just kind of hanging over the road, but remarkably, the power has stayed on. I was pretty nervous about that as we came into this electricity-dependent presentation. Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you so much to the Nelson Library for accommodating this. You know, we've all attended many wonderful programs there on Saturday mornings, and while we missed the coffee and donuts that would have preceded it this morning, it's still nice to kind of see so many familiar faces here.